There's never a dull moment when it comes to Minnesota sports. Whether it's positive or negative.
The Yankees have swept the Twins.
Minnesota Sports Chat has you covered. Talking nothing but Minnesota sports all year long. It's time now for the soon-to-be award-winning, if only in his own mind, Minnesota Sports Chat with your host, Ross Brendel.
Well, that would be me. Welcome inside edition number 234 of the soon-to-be award-winning Minnesota Sports Chat, presented by my friends at Beans Coffee Company. Recording, fairly early on a Tuesday morning with Mr. Daniel House, so I'm sipping on some coffee right now for those watching on the YouTube machine. Oh, that's good stuff. All right. This is the Minnesota Golden Gophers review and preview show. However, not a ton to review here on the field as the Gophers coming off of a bye week, but plenty to preview as they prepare for Maryland championship season this Saturday at 2:30 p.m. at Huntington Bank Stadium as the Gophers look to get a conference victory over a Big Ten team not from LA. 2 wins in the conference, both over UCLA and USC. Joining me now to talk about it is Mr. Daniel House from Gophers Guru, gophersguru.com. Daniel, how you doing today, buddy?
It's the bye week's over. Time to get back to ball. Had a good weekend watching a ton of games. It's college football's been fun this year, Ross. Like the competitive parity of the teams is very apparent because you just can't hoard talent anymore, which I think places a premium on really good coaching. You got to maximize what you got, and you got to know how to allot your talent effectively.
Well, I think where I'll give college football credit, even though there's a lot that I don't love about what's changed in the game the last few years, at least with NIL and transfer portal, it now seems plausible to me that more teams could, in theory, win the national championship. I still think there's a handful of teams that can, but on the right day, right scenario, I think this is probably a bigger field than we've had in, recent memory. So I do applaud them for that. And that does make games more fun. And for teams like Windiana, kind of doing what the Gophers did back in 2019. I mean, I'll be honest, they're taking advantage of a more favorable schedule, but you still have to win the games that you play. And now you're looking at a team like Indiana, Daniel House. I don't think they're going to go undefeated, but man, they might not lose more than a game in the regular season, and they could be in the college football playoff. That is cool. And when we talked about this, and we'll get to Gophers shortly, but if you go back to 2019, if this was the same scenario in place, there's a good chance the Gophers would have been in the college football playoff. So I do like the expanded playoff for that reason. And because of NIL and transfer portal, you are seeing more parity and more teams winning games that you probably aren't used to seeing winning an awful lot on Saturday afternoons.
Well, and then the CFP 12-team expansion is outstanding just because you don't lose one game and feel like the sky is falling, like you have no chance to get in there. Now you're in the 12-team, something crazy can happen. You could have a bad day and lose, and someone gets hot at the right time. It's kind of like the NFL playoffs where you got a bottom C wild card that can just catch stride at the right time and find it and work their way through the CFP. So that's what I mean. I am enjoying watching college football this year because I feel like a lot of these matchups are very even, but what is the separator? It's the coaching, it's the scheming, it's the game planning, and then it's the ability to be able to use your roster. And if you don't allot your resources the right way, you run out of depth, you don't have the things that you need to match up against the opponents you're playing, you're going to have a tough pass. So the creative quality coaching is going to be the key moving forward as you head in now to salary cap down the road here and starting to think outside the box.
Let's actually talk about this really briefly. We'll get to Gophers. Salary cap, I find it interesting because I do think that it could help, but I also don't think I'm trying to walk the fine line here. I don't know how much of a difference it will make when name, image, and likeness is still a thing. Does that make sense to you? Because you're still going to have the programs that have more money can still go out and get the best players. All this now means is that college players who are making a good chunk of money now will make even more money. So I'm not sure how a salary cap really fixes the problem, because that has nothing to do with name, image, and likeness. It's outside of that.
Yeah, I mean, you got those two components working in lockstep, but if you can give that person a quality piece of the revenue share pie and get them enough NIL to satisfy it, like it'll allow you to, like a school, for example, like Minnesota, if they turn the dial the right way and get the right type of productive players, maybe down a level from the FCS to build out and round out the depth of your roster, there are ways that you can do it where, maybe you're thinking about it in more of a sense of like, how can you add the best players that give you the best chance to win at the position groups that matter most in college football. There are some things that are going to get very interesting here. Like, how do teams allot their money? Where do they put it, specific to positions? I am fascinated, been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes looking at this, and I think it's going to be a fascinating time for college football. And Indiana's laid out a cool blueprint. I think people would be fascinated to really study what Cignetti did to get this thing off the ground.
All I can say, House, if you want to know more about my podcasting and broadcasting history, Google me. I excel at everything I do.
I love the confidence, though. It's all ball. Like, Cignetti is all ball all the time. And I love, he was doing an interview the other day. He was talking about how when it's a close game at the half, he'll just go in nice and calm, because he said you just get the team, all riled up if you come in and just go at the guys. He said, however, when they got a wide lead at the half, he's coming in just getting on these guys about everything, because he wants them to stay focused. And he knows that, like, the standard has to be raised to stay focused in those type of games. So I don't know. I think he's a great coach, great fundamentals. I mean, you watch those guys play, they are a crisp football team on both sides of the ball, and they're built well, experienced players, productive players.
It's a beautiful campus, and I was there when the stadium was being renovated, so I didn't see it fully in its entirety. It was at probably 75-80% is what was told to me. And I thought it was great. And Indiana has traditionally, for many, many years, even far more than the Gophers, been a traditional bottom feeder in the Big Ten Conference. So you can't help but not feel good for them and continue to cheer for them. Now, if they start doing this every year, I'll get annoyed by it. But for now, I'm enjoying it, and good for Kirk Cignetti and the Windiana Hoosiers. I got one more for you before we segue into Gophers talk. Another week, and yet we are still sitting with the possibility of back-to-back Army-Navy. The Naval Academy takeover in college football is real. Can our Navy squad beat Notre Dame this weekend? It's a 13.5-point spread that Notre Dame, or I should say line, Notre Dame favored by 13.5. I got to think Navy can cover 13.5.
Well, yeah, especially if they can shorten the game up, and limit the amount of possessions. You have a feeling that will happen. I mean, you got to believe Marcus Freeman's up at night sweating a little bit, thinking about how he's going to stop this. I mean, it's a hot attack right now. They got all the confidence coming into this game. Notre Dame cannot be in a situation where they're pressing here, because they're going to come in very confident, and they're executing at a really high level right now. And like, you run into those games where you don't see that type of offense very often. So it's really hard, because, you're trying to prepare for it during the week and simulate every possible look that you can. And we'll see how Notre Dame handles it.
Yeah, and I also don't want to make Navy and even Army for that, I guess, reason. Really struggling with words today. I got to drink more of my Beans Coffee Company coffee. But they're passing the ball, too. They have almost 900 yards, over 900 yards passing as a team. Army's quarterback, Blake Horvath, 10 touchdown passes, 1 interception. So this is not your traditional Navy and Army, for that matter, ground and pound Naval Academy football or military academy football. It's fun to watch. I'm all for this. If one of these two teams wound up in the CFP as the, I don't even know what we call them. Do we call them mid-majors? What do we call them in college football when they're not the group of 4?
They're the
what do we? I know, I'm struggling with it too. Whatever. They might be the
group of 5. The group of 5.
Do we still call them that though? Is
that
what they still are?
They're calling a group of 5.
Okay.
Still.
It's kind of like we call the Big Ten conference with 18 teams, the Big 10, the Big 12 conference. We still call the Big 12. But no, I just think it's exciting, and it's And it's fun to see. And again, when you think of Army and Navy, and I'm sure you knew this year, Army, Navy, and there's one other school without a transfer on their roster because Army and Navy can't take transfers. Do you know the other school that doesn't have a transfer?
Clemson?
Yeah, Clemson, because Dabo just doesn't take them. I think he will at some point, but it's incredible to see them doing well. It's fun. I like it.
Yeah, and the evolution of triple option football is interesting. Like the passing component into it now, like it's something that a lot of people are going to be studying this offseason to just see what those schools are doing and how they've evolved as the game has continued to change, and they're keeping up with it, which is pretty cool. I love that. I love football evolution and how coaches adapt based on where the game's going, the personnel they have, and the opponents that they're playing each week. That's the best part about it.
So I'm scrambling to look at the top 25 because I know Navy comes into this week at 23, but did Army move into the top 20? They might have. Not 20. Army's 23, Navy 24, according to the AP. So there we go. 2 military schools in the top 25. You love to see it, Daniel House. I'm hoping for double Army Navy this year. However, that could really screw up the college football playoff format and the bowl selection, but I kind of appreciate the chaos. Let's do this. Let me tell you all about my friends at Beans Coffee Company. If you're watching on the YouTube machine, you saw me drink a sip of it. I'm going to take another sip, as you can probably sense and see. I'm really struggling this morning. Doesn't that sound good? Don't you just love to listen to somebody slurp their coffee? Beans Coffee Company, they've been supporting Minnesota Sports Chat now for over 2 years. And I'd really love you to thank them. Again, I've told you this now for about a month. I don't need you to buy anything, but I'm confident that when you go to coffeebybeans.com, if you're a coffee drinker, you're going to see something that you like and you're going to want to give them a try. Again, you don't have to buy anything, but just check it out. Coffeebybeans.com. That's coffeebybeans.com. Blends and roasts made in small batches, literally for anybody's palate. There's something delightful and tasty for your personal preference. It's the best small batch coffee you'll ever try, roasted locally in Mankato, Minnesota. You're supporting fans who support the same teams that we do. Minnesota guys making great coffee. Coffeebybeans.com. If you use the promo code SportsChat, again, that's SportsChat, I'll save you a little cash at checkout. Beans Coffee Company ships for free on all orders of $35 or more. That's coffeebybeans.com. Promo code SportsChat. They have great gift boxes you can buy, perfect for the holiday season here, which is, I guess we can say it's here. It's almost Halloween here, just days from Halloween. And then I count November 1st, Daniel, as the real start of the holiday season. So get on that gift buying, coffeebybeans.com, promo code SportsChat. Should we get into a little bit of Minnesota and Maryland preview? 2:30 Saturday at Huntington Bank Stadium. You good with that?
Let's go.
Let's start with the coach previewing what he sees from Maryland coming off of their big win over USC this past weekend by a final score of 29-28.
Yeah, I mean, they can do a lot of things from odd to even. They can get to a lot of, we got a chance to be able to get into them a little bit last week and confirm what we saw and continue to game plan based on their game against USC. But they're big and stout up front. They're twitchy. They got a lot of length, size, strength. They're really good at center of gravity, shedding blocks, making plays with defensive linemen. Linebackers are really active, come downhill really well. They're stout. They tackle really well. And, getting to multiple fronts and multiple pressures where they can create things you haven't seen has really been the flavor we've seen the last 3-4 weeks, starting with Michigan and going all the way down. And that's a challenge because you got to be really good in-game adjustments because you're going to see things that you haven't prepared for. And they can get to a lot of things you haven't prepared for because of the variety of fronts that they have.
And that is head coach PJ Fleck from his weekly presser. Thanks to Gopher Sports on YouTube. Maryland comes into Huntington Bank Stadium at 4-3, 1-3 in the Big Ten. They're coming off of a come from behind 29-28 win over USC. Maryland's quarterback Billy Edwards Jr., 2,100 yards passing, 13 TDs, and just 4 interceptions. That'll be something you want to keep an eye on Saturday. Daniel, do you want to guess what the ESPN matchup predictor says as of yesterday for the Gophers in Maryland from Huntington Bank Stadium.
I'm gonna say Minnesota 52%.
Oh, they actually like Minnesota a bit more. 61.4% per the ESPN matchup predictor. Again, for whatever that's worth. If anybody can ever explain that thing to me, I would certainly appreciate it. I've said this numerous times, Daniel. Maybe the next Gopher bye week, maybe I'll get somebody from ESPN and we can grill them on how their matchup predictor works. Wouldn't that be fun?
Oh, that would be entertaining.
I'm not calling it junk science because I do think you can look at it and it can give you, I think what it tells you is, okay, this team is probably potentially better. But when you see something that says 61.4%, well, to me, you're telling me there's a 40% chance that the other team wins, which is still a really good chance. So again, I don't know what that means, but I do love to bring it up. What can you tell us about Maryland that you can echo that either the head football coach said or that you want to sprinkle in yourself?
Offense is intriguing. Mike Loxley took over play calling last week. Started doing it a little bit in the Northwestern game. I thought the Northwestern game, the turnovers were the difference. It felt like they could have won that game. They would have taken care of the ball better. Their wide receivers are good. Ty Felton is a name that'll be in the NFL draft circuit heavily over the next few months. Billy Edwards has played really, really well at quarterback. I like how he can escape, make plays with his legs, but also, make throws at all three levels, throw into tight windows. Very skilled quarterback. And the ability to have Felton and Prather's a bigger target who can go up and get the ball. You got Octavian Smith out of the slot who can, he's a smaller guy, but he can really make plays in traffic as well and stress you in space. Your tackling has to be on point. They're going to put the ball in the perimeter a lot and test you in that way. You look at the defense, very multiple, like PJ said. You'll get different fronts here and there. They'll mix coverages up. They like to roll out into zone like cover two in passing down situations. The tough part about Maryland's defense, I actually had them. I do a little side research job during the week, and I had Maryland a few weeks ago. And the toughest part about them is like they play so many guys on the defensive side of the ball that they're constantly rotating. It's hard to get a pin on their personnel. So I think having the bye week for Minnesota at the time they did coming into the Maryland game was actually pretty useful because this team plays a lot of personnel. They're pretty fast on defense. I like the interior of their defensive line. I think that's the strength of their team. They've done a nice job building it there. But we'll see. Minnesota, can they stretch them vertically a little bit? I think there's some opportunity to throw the ball down the field against this team based on how their secondary has been playing. So fun matchup, though. I think this is going to be a close football game.
Yeah, I don't know how much what I'm going to say next matters to a lot of people because you can argue all day long now how much bowl games matter or don't matter. I would still say for the players that are coming back the next year, they matter because, again, we can also debate how much does extra practice time at the end of the year actually matter. My argument to that has always been, well, unless somebody gets catastrophically injured, it can't hurt to have that extra practice time. So I'd rather go to a bowl game than not go to a bowl game, no matter what players are going to appear and play in that game. House, I can make the argument to you that whoever loses on Saturday more than likely will not qualify at 6-6 to go to a bowl game. Minnesota, after Maryland, closes at Illinois, at Rutgers, at home against Penn State, at Wisconsin. Counter that with Maryland after Minnesota. It's not much more of a treat, Daniel. They go at Oregon, at home against Rutgers, at home against Iowa, at Penn State. It kind of feels like the loser's not going to get to 6 wins. And who knows? Maybe one of these teams will surprise us and whoever loses still wins a few games. Heck, maybe the Gophers finish 8-4. I don't know. I'm just saying logically looking at that schedule, the path to a bowl game seems to be very important to both teams to win on Saturday.
Huge game for both teams, especially since Minnesota's at home. Having the home field advantage here, which I think is important in the Big Ten. It's kind of underrated. The student section at Minnesota's home games this year has been just unbelievable. Like, it's probably, honestly, I would put that USC game just from like an environment standpoint, just crowd noise, people into the game. That was one of the better ones I've been to the whole time I've been doing it entering year 9. So I think that's something that Minnesota has to lean on. Their pass rush, the fans were really big in that USC game, allowing the pass rush to get off the ball fast. That sack by Ja Joyner, there was some confusion and snap count stuff before the snap, and they couldn't hard count Minnesota like they typically had in the past because of the crowd noise. So you got to use that home game to your advantage here.
I think when Huntington Bank Stadium is rocking, if that's the term the kids still use, under PJ Fleck, it's been dramatically different. And I've said this for basically years now. He should get a ton of credit for that. That crowd has, for lack of a better way of putting it, has really turned over, and it's a pretty fun atmosphere. And when it's full, it can be a really nice home field advantage. And I think you saw that in the USC game to an extent for a while when the fans had a reason to care. You saw that in the first half against Iowa. It's been good crowds this year, and I think they're expecting, or they're darn near a sellout again for homecoming. Yeah. So the atmosphere should be fun. It's a 2:30 start, so people will have plenty of time to get their liquid courage in them, which I know many people partake in. So it should be a pretty fun atmosphere. And to me, I say this all the time, to me, that's one of the better parts of college football. The pageantry of college football is very difficult to beat, and I'm not saying Minnesota holds a candle to most schools in the SEC. But what I am saying is it's a lot better now than it was 10 years ago.
It's Big Ten football. And with the expansion now, the opponents that you're playing, the competitive nature of college football with the parity that we're seeing based on the transfer portal and NIL, like it creates an environment where the games are competitive. You get to go back to your university. Like this is homecoming weekend, so there'll be a lot of people coming back, going to the game, reminiscing about their time being on campus, going to classes there. That's what makes college football special, is that component is always there. No matter what the change of the game is, you still have the campus experience. You still have the school that you went to and the pride that you have for the university. So that's really what you like to see. And credit to the Gophers. I mean, like Mike Wiersbicki in their marketing department, one of their associate ADs, has done a really good job of being super creative and working to get people to games. I think that's been a big factor too.
Don't worry, Daniel, I'm keeping the under.
That signals the last topic or question of the pod. We'll go to a quick look around the Big Ten. Nebraska at Ohio State, Washington at Indiana, Illinois at Oregon, Northwestern at Iowa, Maryland at Minnesota, Penn State at Wisconsin, Michigan State at Michigan for the Battle of Michigan. I got a couple of hot takes for you. Ohio State's favored by 25.5 over Nebraska. I actually like Nebraska to rebound and at least cover the 25.5.
Yeah, I do too.
Taken to the woodshed by Indiana. And another one, I don't quite know which way to go. Oregon giving 21.5 to Illinois. I know it's at Autzen Stadium, but does 21.5 seem high to you, or does that feel like Oregon will roll to victory?
I feel like it's close because here's the thing. Illinois is going to try to shorten this thing up where they're going to try to run the ball, control clock, keep Oregon's offense off the field. So if they are able to run the ball effectively, which is going to be a task against Oregon's front, I think that number, you could take that, what is it, plus 21.5? Yeah, plus 21.5. I think that number, could be attainable, but I also see a world where it's just slightly above that at like 24-point margin for Oregon.
Anything else around college football piquing your interest this weekend? There's not a ton to me that really jumps out. Missouri is at Alabama. I would like to think that Alabama will rebound and win that game comfortably. Missouri is better defensively, but they still don't play a ton of defense.
I feel like
you don't get many of these, House, but there will be games that develop and turn out to be great, but it's kind of a blah weekend around college football.
Well, now that you said that, Ross, there's going to be a ton of upsets because college football is really unpredictable this year. I said that before the season started. I said, no way. Anybody who's putting out predictions this year with all of the movement and things that gone on and the coaching side of it that people don't talk about, trying to install your schemes and the personnel, it created an unpredictable atmosphere. I would say this week's matchup, I'm interested in Wisconsin playing Penn State. Wisconsin's offensive line is playing really well right now. They're executing extremely high level. The gap scheme runs are working for them. Longo's done a good job of adapting to personnel. Braden Locke looks much more comfortable. The interior of their defensive line is playing much better, which I think is the key moving forward for them. Can they play the run well? And then Michigan State. Michigan State got a big win over Iowa last week.
Yes,
held
they did.
that rushing attack in check. Joe Rossi doing a good job, drawing up a scheme. Only gave up one big rushing explosive, and Aiden Childs played his best game. When they take care of the football, they're in great shape. You look at the turnover battle in that game, I think that's going to be the key. Both of those teams are very close. I think they're like just a shade over -1 turnover margin per game. So the team that takes care of the ball better is going to probably leave victorious with the Paul Bunyan trophy there.
Paul Bunyan's axe greater than the Paul Bunyan trophy. I'm a little underwhelmed by that trophy.
I actually kind of like that trophy.
Okay. I mean, it's kind of hilarious looking, and maybe that's the point. I mean, I don't know.
It looks like it's been through something, like it's been through things.
You know, I think pretty much all those rivalry trophies they've been through some battles themselves. Daniel, what's at gophersguru.com, and what do you want to let people know about?
You can read a piece about some of the things I noticed with the offense over the first 7 games, some advanced stat stuff, and then a little film component included. USCLA breakdown from the previous week. You can get some insight on the offense and defense, and then Maryland preview coming soon. So lots of stuff on the site.
Love it. That is at gophersguru.com. He is at Daniel House MN on the X Machine. Thank you, buddy. We'll do this next week when we review Maryland and preview the Illini.
Have a good week.
Or is it Rutgers? No, it's the Illini. I just said the schedule earlier. I'm second guessing myself. That's my guy, Daniel House, again, at Daniel House MN, gophersguru.com. I am at the Ross Brendel on that X Machine, Minnesota Sports Chat on the YouTube machine. No matter how you're listening, please maybe review, tell your friends and family. Really appreciate it. Certainly helps this little venture of mine out. I am back again in this feed really soon for myself and Daniel House. Thank you so much for listening.
Don't worry, Daniel, I'm keeping the under.
Thanks for listening to Minnesota Sports Chat, presented by Beans Coffee Company. Use the promo code SPORTSCHAT. That's one word, Sports Chat, to save at checkout. Follow Ross on X at the Ross Brendel. Like and subscribe to Minnesota Sports Chat wherever you get your podcasts. Rate and review kindly.